Nigeria's total debt stood at 12.1 trillion naira at the end of the second quarter of 2015. The national debt is now 19.1 trillion naira. The country's debt has increased by 7 trillion naira in 2 years. Is the rising debt in line with the plans to get out of recession, especially the vision of long-term growth? Well, joining me to review the recent debt report by the Debt Management Office is Babajide Ogusowo, Channel Television's in-house data and information analyst. It's been a while we had you on the news at 10. Welcome again. So, is there a sustainable debt issuance and management plan for Nigeria?
It all depends on how you want to look at it. If we want to look at the sustainability of the debt, yes, our debt is sustainable, especially if you look at global indicators such as our debt to GDP. So yes, it is sustainable. But the second question is it suitable? And one way to look at if it's suitable is to look at our debt and revenue. Does it match? So if you look at the suitability question, no, it isn't as suitable as it should be. But even before sustainability or suitability, there's a question that we need to ask, and that is, what is the vision of debt and what does it state in the Constitution? And let me clearly share something with you that you'll find interesting. A flying hawk from miles away can see a mouse on the ground. From miles away, whales can speak to each other from kilometers apart. They communicate very easily. Dogs can sort over a dozen different smells at the same time. Pretty amazing stuff. You and I can't do any of that. But here's what you and I can do. We have vision. They don't have any of those things. What is vision? Vision is the ability to create our future. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the vision of debt and what does the Constitution state about what the government should focus on? And quickly, it is found in section 14, subsection 2b of the Constitution. You will also find it even in section 16, subsection 1b and 1d of the Constitution. And it is also in section 17, subsection 3a and 3c of the Constitution. It clearly states that if the government is to increase debt, it lets us see what we should focus on. And we should focus on the economic welfare and prosperity for all Nigerians. That is what the mandate should be. So even if our debt increases and we choose to grow by rising debt, the focus should be on ensuring that we create prosperity and welfare for all Nigerians.
Are we doing that?
It depends on how we want to look at it. Perhaps two questions that are on the mind of most Nigerians is, will all of this rising debt get us out of recession? And the second question is, will all of the federal government's rising debt reduce the level of unemployment? So let's quickly look at unemployment and the FG's rising domestic debt. We'll clearly see that when this administration came in, as at the end of second quarter, the federal government's domestic debt was 8.4 trillion naira. The evidence today shows that that has risen by 3.6 trillion naira. So today, the FG's domestic debt is 12 trillion naira. But here's the challenge. The FG's domestic debt is rising and unemployment isn't reducing. Unemployment has risen from 26.5% in the second quarter of 2015 to what the NBS says it is today, 35.2%. So clearly, the FG's rising domestic debt doesn't reduce unemployment. The second way to even look at it is, let's look at our total external debt for both the state and the FG. Within the last 2 years, total external debt has more than doubled from 2 trillion naira in 2015, the second quarter, to 4.2 trillion naira. So the challenge is, we're seeing a lot of debt rising, but we shouldn't be bothered because, like I said earlier, that debt is sustainable, but the revenue isn't growing. So if we look at our revenue, we will then find that there are concerns. And the reason why we need to grow our revenue, pretty much two reasons. And that's because if our revenue remains stagnant, then our cost of borrowing will rise because of the notion of a higher credit risk default. The second reason why we need revenues to grow is for the government to have more money to spend on infrastructure, what we call capital projects. And in the final analysis, let's look at why capital spending is so important. Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook, for instance, last year spent over 2 trillion naira on R&D, research and development, money that may never come back, and quickly.
And we would love to explore, much of, your analysis tonight, but we really have to go. Thank you.
Surely, but
Thank
we
you so much.
need
We'll
to keep an
back.
eye on revenue. That is what we need to do.
Yeah, so many questions indeed come to mind, as you explain all of this, but thanks a lot for sharing your time with us here on the News at 10.